Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We're going to be looking today at the changes to the platform which we introduced in our summer 2022 release. I know that I've met quite a lot of you, either physically or virtually, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jean Hardy-Matthews and I'm the Customer Success Manager here at Workbooks. I also head up our account management team. With me on the line today is Andrew O'Hara, who is our Product Marketing Manager. Andrew hasn't been on one of these release webinars previously, but if you attended our customer event last autumn sometime, you'll have seen him presenting there. Before I go any further, if you can detect that I sound very nasal, it's because I haven't been very well and my voice is still a little bit croaky, so I hope it's clear enough for you. But the good news obviously is that you can't catch anything from me online. It also means, by the way, that Andrew and I aren't physically in the same place today, so bear with us when we're transitioning from me speaking across to Andrew. In terms of the presentation, as always, we'll use a mixture of slideware and product demo to show you the new functionality, and we will give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end, but if you want to put them into the chat in the meantime, do feel free. So let's have a look at what we're going to be covering today. I think probably the most significant, the most visual change is the new theme that we've got. It's called Clean Theme. We've had feedback from our customers and prospects who've been telling us that whilst they like the ease of navigation in the platform, they wanted it to look cleaner and crisper. So we've listened and we've made some changes. The theme has been released in beta, so you're using the platform and you may well not have seen this yet. If you do want to use it, you will have to actively switch it on, and I'll show you how to do that when we move into the product. We do plan for it to be switched on by default in our next release, so I'd really recommend that you try it now so that you can give us your feedback and contribute to the overall appearance. Today we'll be demoing in the Clean Theme, and going forward, screenshots on our knowledge base, new screenshots and any new video recordings will use the new interface, so it's worth you trying it out. Springboards. Hopefully you've started using Springboards, and if you have, you've noticed that they're all called My Springboard. So we've made a simple change that allows you to rename them to something else if you choose to. B2B and B2C, most of you online today will probably work in the business-to-business world, but some of our customers operate in a business-to-consumer world. So we've added a choice of settings that allow you to control whether or not customer fields on transaction records in Workbooks can be populated with people records or with organisation information. Primary and finance contacts. We've added some standard fields to all transaction records that allow you to select primary and finance contacts. You can then, when you select those, you can also, if you choose, automatically display other related data, such as that contact's email address and telephone number. I don't know if any of you can hear it. I'm getting quite a lot of feedback at the moment. So if anybody, let me just check, if anybody isn't on mute, I think you all are. Maybe, I'm not sure if it's coming from you, Andrew. Could you maybe go on mute until it's your turn, if you don't mind? Thank you. The Overview tab. We've had some really good feedback about the Overview tab. We introduced it on Opportunities and Cases. It came out last October. And because of that positive feedback, we've extended it to be available on people, organisations, and also all transaction records. And you'll see that as we work through the product. You'll see we've switched it on so you can see it. Maximise new windows. If you're like me and prefer to see windows in full screen when you first open them, there's now an easy setting that will allow you to do exactly that. Field values, copying field values on activities. We've introduced the ability to create either multi-line or rich text fields on activity records and flag them such that their contents can be copied from one activity to another when you create a follow-on activity. The functionality itself is available to everyone, but I think it will probably be of most interest to those of you who use the Workbooks Exchange Server Synchronization, or the WES, you might have heard us call it. because what it allows is for you to create fields in workbooks that aren't shared into Outlook, so there's no chance that your customers will see the content, whatever you've put in those fields. Billing and delivery addresses. For those of you who work frequently with transaction records, I guess it might be a bit frustrating if you have to keep changing the invoice or delivery address on those transaction records. So now on both people and on organisation records, you can set up default billing and a default delivery address. And then these are used automatically on your transaction records. You can still overtype them if you need to, but they will appear automatically. Next, hopefully you've all started using the Word templates and Word integration. It's been around for a little while now. But we've improved the functionality of those templates so that they are easier to create, and they include more flexibility, such as the ability to add more than one table to the template. Auto-sizing. It's a very small but neat enhancement, the ability to auto-size the height of grid reports in elements or tiles on dashboards so that you don't see lots of white space underneath short reports. And in a similar but slightly different vein, just to make controlling your layout easier, you can now auto-size the width of all columns in a grid. And finally, there have been some really nice enhancements to reporting. I'm starting to get used to them. I'm making myself use them because they're actually going to make my life an awful lot easier. So I hope that when you see them, you find them useful too. So I'll move into workbooks in a moment to have a look at these. I'm going to start the demo and then I'll hand over partway through to Andrew to continue on with it. And then after that, Andrew will recap on the functionality that we've shown you, and then we'll open the floor to any questions. So let me switch into workbooks. So I talked in the introduction about the new clean theme that we've got, and on the screen at the moment you can see hopefully a couple of things. You can see the organisation record for Atlantic Computer Services, as well as in the background on the right, my Springboard. The new theme, hopefully you can see, if I get my mouse to work, I drag this over slightly, it makes it a little bit easier. You can see that we've got rounded corners on records, and also there's a coloured border all the way around them. In this instance, on this organisation record, the border's black. But if I were to open Alan Whitehead's person record, which I can do from the hyperlink here, there it is. You can see, again, the rounded corners are there, but you can see that the border is blue. And that's because the borders on these records, they reflect the coloured icon in the top left-hand corner that we use to identify different record types. And I think this border makes it much easier to differentiate between record types, especially transaction records, because often they look very similar. In terms of the theme, you'll notice that across the top of all the records, we've still got the tabs, we're still tabtastic, but they aren't as obvious. They're slightly more discreet, if you like. And underneath them, the buttons, they used to be blue, they're now transparent, just with a little border. So we haven't necessarily completed all of these changes, which is why we would like your feedback. And we'd like you to try it out and let us know what you think. If you haven't switched it on and you would like to, users can control this within their preferences. And hopefully most of you know, you can get to preferences from the start button and preferences down at the bottom. Alternatively, when you've got desktop showing, you can just right click on it and select preferences. It takes you to the same place. I'll maximize that. So you can see this section here says look and feel. And at the moment, it does say that we're using the clean theme, and it says beta in brackets because we are betaing it. That's where you would go if, as a user, if you wanted to change your theme. Make sure to tick in this choose a look and feel checkbox first, and then select clean beta. If, as a user, you don't even see that look and feel section, it'll be because your system administrator hasn't allowed you to change the look and feel of the system. So for the admins amongst you, you can push this theme out to all of your users if you want to, or you can give them the choice, like the user I'm logged in has got a choice. And to do that, you need to go into configuration. So start configuration. When that loads, customization, desktop preferences. Let's suppose this. And it's this section, look and feel here. If you want to push it out to everybody, make sure that the theme selected here is clean in brackets beta, not modern or classic. And if you want users to be able to set this for themselves, make sure there's a tick in the box about a third of the way down the screen. Users can change their look and feel. If you don't want them to, make sure that box isn't ticked. The other thing to mention about Clean Theme, just under its name here, you can see a checkbox that says use the compact version of the theme where possible. The compact version fits more rows onto the screen, more rows of data. And I know from feedback that it's the reason why some of our users are still persisting in using the original classic theme, because this does the same thing. So you may well like to just jump straight onto Clean and try that out, because you'll get the same records, same number of records on the screen. Where it says use it where possible, because what that's referring to is that if any users are using a touch device, the data will automatically be more spaced out so that you're able to click on the right thing. So while here, just below the look and feel section, you can see a section called Springboard. I do hope that you're using the Springboards. We find them really useful. But as I mentioned in the introduction, by default, they're all called My Springboard. If you want to rename this, maybe things to check today or whatever you want to call them, simply do that and click Save. It will apply to everybody's Springboard. You can't change individual ones, but that's nice and quick and easy to do. So I will come out of there. And if I just close down these things on my screen for a moment, and I'm going to reload my screen. Before I do, notice that my Springboard on the right says My Springboard, but I'm going to reload, and automatically it says things to check today based on that change I just made. The next enhancement that I'd like to show you is the B2B and B2C settings. They're in the configuration area, so they're only accessible to those of you with system administrator capabilities. So I'll go to Start, Configuration. And they're in the database area of configuration, database settings. And if you scroll down, I'm not quite familiar exactly myself with where it is yet, but if I keep scrolling down here, I will get to a section called Customer Transaction Type. You'll see it says Preferred Customer Type, Businesses and Consumers. That's how we've always operated, that you can choose either an organization name or a person name in customer fields. So we've left that as it is. We haven't changed it for any of you. But if any of you do want to change and just focus on businesses or just focus on consumers, this is where to go to set it. So I'll set mine to be businesses. Remember to save and close to keep that change. Now, to illustrate the next few changes, I'm going to start with a lead record, and I've got one on my desktop here for Michael Smith, which I'll open up. And let me maximize that. So I haven't put an awful lot of detail in here, but we know it's for somebody called Michael Smith. We've got his job title and a few details about him, his email and mobile phone number. And on the right, we can see that he works for Atlantic Computer Services. This isn't new, this is just standard. I'm going to use the standard convert button to convert this lead into an opportunity. Again, standard. Lots of you will be doing this on a daily basis. So this will create a new opportunity for me. It'll create a new person. And in about the middle of the screen here, it says, what's this person's role in the opportunity? I'm going to keep them as being the primary contact. We don't know whether Michael's positive or negative about us yet, so I'll leave it as not known. And then below that, I could create a new organization as well. I'm not going to, because we've already got Atlantic Computer Services on the system. So I'll take the tick out of that box and instead highlight Atlantic Computer Services. Again, all of this is standard, but let me click next, and what will happen is the opportunity will open up on the screen. And there it is. I will maximize it. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, the Overview tab has been switched on in the right-hand panel. That's not new with this release, but I do want to highlight it because I know that there are quite a few of you who aren't yet using this functionality. Before I do anything else, I'm going to complete this mandatory field with the solid blue line, the close date. I'll just put today in there just to populate it. So those of you who use opportunity records, yours won't look exactly like this one, but they should hopefully look similar. And under prospective customer, it says Atlantic Computer Services. If I wanted to change that customer for any reason, I could use the down arrow. And what you're seeing here now is an alphabetical list of all the organisations on my database, on this test database. I'm not seeing any people names, even if I scroll down. These are all organisations. And that's by virtue of the fact that before I converted that lead, I made sure that in my database settings, this database was set up for B2B. So that's the prospective customer. And then I've exposed on this opportunity record primary contact details. And you can see that Michael, who was my lead, we said during the conversion process that we wanted him to be the primary contact, and there he is populating the primary contact field, and details about him that were on the lead have been pulled through. If you look in the overview tab on the right-hand side, the overview panel, I should say, you'll see that Michael has been set up as the primary contact. If you notice on the main tab, Michael's name is grayed out. I can't change him from being the primary contact there, but that doesn't mean to say I can't change him. It's just not there. If I go to the right-hand side and click on the gray bar above Michael's name, I could say, oh, I don't want Michael to be the primary contact anymore. Maybe I'll put him down as the budget holder. And actually, maybe I know a little bit more about him. Maybe I know that he's positive about us. So if I save and close that, you can see immediately on the right, he's now got a green bar because he's positive about us. He's the budget holder. But at the moment, he's still showing as the primary contact on the main tab. That's because I haven't saved this record yet, so I will just do that. And this is displayed in a card view, so let me reopen the card. You can see the primary contact has gone. Michael isn't the primary contact anymore, so at this point, we don't know who is. If I want to add a new one, again, I can go over to the overview panel, click on the plus button, and notice that what's being offered to you here is a foreshortened list of people on the database, all people who work for Atlantic Computer Services, the customer. So I'll choose Gracie Singh. I'll click the green Set Relationships button and make her the primary contact. And again, I'll say that Gracie's really positive about us. Relate people. And if I click Save again, straight away, without even opening the card, you can see that Gracie has been made the primary contact. Remember, I'm just showing you this functionality on an opportunity record, but the introduction of primary contacts and also finance contacts has been applied to all transaction records in the system. Your administrator will need to reveal those fields. They won't just magically appear on your form layouts, but if you want to use them, it's an easy job to switch them on and position them wherever you want them to be on that form layout. Now, some of you will be saying, I don't like the idea of having to edit who the primary contact is and other people related to this opportunity in the overview tab. I want to do it on the main tab. And remember, at the moment, I can't. It's read only. But don't worry, if that's the way you want to operate, you absolutely can. It's just dependent on your system admin ticking a box within the database settings. So I'll do that to show you. Start, configuration, database settings, and scroll down and tick the box that says enable primary contact fields. It means primary and finance contacts. If I tick that and click save and close and just go back and save my opportunity, you'll find that when I reopen this card view, the field is now writable. So I'll change it there just to prove it's not smoke and mirrors. So again, I'm getting a foreshortened list of who I can populate into here. Let's choose Kate Weller and save. And now that's reloaded, you can see on the main tab, Kate Weller, the marketing manager, is the primary contact for this customer. And on the right-hand side, the card, if you like, for Gracie has gone because Kate has overwritten Gracie as being the primary contact for this particular opportunity. So now that we've got this primary contact, what I'd also like to show you is this concept of being able to copy data from a field on one activity into the next one. Before I do, you might have noticed that over the last 2 or 3 things that I've shown you, I've gone and maximised the record to try and make it a little bit easier for you to see. But I did mention that in preferences, you can set this up. So I'm going to go to Start, Preferences, and scroll down until you get to the desktop interface area and just check the box that says Maximise all new windows. Save and close that, and that will take immediate effect. So yes, let's go back to the opportunity that I've got here. I'm going to create a follow-up activity to give Kate Weller a call to follow up on this opportunity. And I can do that using the icons on the card here. So if I click, I can create a phone call activity or any of those others. So I just say follow up on op, and let's say that I want to do that today. Imagine for a second that I've called Kate, I managed to get through, and she said to me that she does want to talk to me, but she's too busy right now. Could I give her a call back tomorrow? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the outcome field and select busy, call back later. And under next steps, I'm going to choose follow up. And when? Okay, well, I'll do that tomorrow. Those of you who use these activity records, let me just click away and I'll do that again to highlight. We've got the description field, that's standard, but because it's a rich text field, you don't see the rich text toolbar until I click into it. There we go. So description of what we discussed would go in here. Below that, the field named background info, that's just a custom field. I happen to have set one up here that's a rich text field, or it could have been a multi-line text, that would also work. And the idea is that I can type in here with background info. And by background info, you don't have to call it background info, that's just my choice. What I'm talking about here is anything that you don't want to be shared with the customer. I'll come back to that in a moment. So I'm going to click Save and Close. So just by doing that, that's created two activities for me. You'll see them both on the right-hand side. At the bottom on the right is the one that I'm saying I completed today. And at the top is the one that I've set up that's due tomorrow. Excuse me. Actually, just excuse me one moment. I think I might have a slight coughing fit. Bear with me. Apologies, folks. Hopefully I did manage to mute myself there. So I was saying, we've got the two activities, the one that's been completed today, the one that's due tomorrow. I'm going to open the one that's due tomorrow. Notice how it opens full screen because I ticked that in my preferences. The behavior in the description field is exactly as it has been for the last few releases. Whatever I wrote in there gets copied into the next activity. But we didn't used to have the ability to have a custom field that you could write into and that content would be copied into the next field. But now we have. You can see in the background info, what I typed in is still there. As I mentioned earlier, I think this is most likely to be useful to those of you who are using the WES, the Workbooks Exchange Server Synchronization. Because what it means is that you can have a field on a task or a meeting that when it's shared into Outlook, at the moment, the description field would be shared into Outlook and anything you typed in there would show up. So particularly if this was a meeting record that you shared into Outlook, I'm not saying you would ever say anything rude, but you might have written something down that was really much more appropriate for internal use. If you put it in the description field, it will end up in that description field within a meeting record. And then when the meeting invites go out to their destination, the recipients will be able to see everything that you typed in. So I do encourage you to create a field where you can be sure that's not going to be shared with Outlook. So anything that you want to keep private, it's not private within Workbooks, but it's not going to be visible to your customers, then use this new functionality. Notice actually I put a bit of info text on the screen as well, just to remind to remind users of the difference in what happens in the description field that might be visible to customers, whereas the background info isn't. So you might like to take a similar approach. I'll save and close that. Now, before I finish, I would like to show you how you can set up default billing and delivery addresses to make completing those transaction records much easier. So I'm going to open Atlantic Computer Services, which I can do from the hyperlink I've got on the screen at the moment. Again, nice and full screen, which suits me. I'm going to go to the Contact Details tab, which we've had forever. Contact details. So we've had the ability to set up multiple addresses for either a person or an organization. We've had that for a long time, but now you can actually specify default ones. So here's an address for the warehouse. If I open that up, you can see there are now two checkboxes, preferred billing and preferred delivery location. I'm going to make the warehouse one the preferred delivery location at Newtown Business Park and save and close that. I could make the work address the default invoice one, or I could create a new one, whatever you want, whatever is appropriate. I'm going to call this one invoice address, but that's not what controls it being the default. The default is controlled by ticking the preferred billing location checkbox. So I'll call it imaginatively invoice house, invoice street, and then maybe invoice town, just to illustrate it. For those of you who haven't used these addresses, if you notice at the bottom, there are two date fields, valid from and until. And if you set these defaults up, they will obey these dates. So if I said this wasn't valid until September, maybe we knew they were going to be moving to new offices and it's not valid till then it won't be the default address until you start using it in September. Equally, if I said valid until and made this stop at the end of the week, then this would only be the default invoice address until the end of the week. Save and close. I'll be handing over to Andrew in a moment, and he's going to show you more of this new functionality, and he'll demonstrate these default addresses in use. Before I go, though, I'm just going to go back to the main tab of Atlantic Computer Services, and this gives me a chance to show you another tiny enhancement. On the Save and Close button now, as well as the options to just save or save and close, there's also an option to close the record. It does exactly the same thing as the small cross in the top right-hand corner of a record does. So if you close something that hasn't had any changes saved, you will be prompted. Otherwise, you can just click on it and it will just close. So thank you for listening to my part. I'll be back when we get to the question section, but for now, I'm going to hand over to Andrew.
Thank you very much, Jean. Thanks very much for that. So as Jean said at the head of this, my name is Andrew O'Hara and I am the Product Marketing Manager for Workbooks. And indeed, if you attended the customer conference, you may remember me as the thumb in the orange shirt that presented. So as Jean said just a moment ago, with regards to the default billing address and delivery address, I'm going to take you through how those are being used in the product at the moment. So if I just open up the Atlantic Computer Services organization record, and then within that, I go through to transactions. I use the toast rack here. And I open this invoice. So I've opened the invoice record. And within the invoice record, you can see a couple of things here. So for example, Jean spoke earlier on about primary contact details and finance contact details. So I have Alan in here as primary contact. And I also have Suzanne in here as finance contact. So with regards to the default billing address and invoice address, you can see here that we now have billing address details and delivery address details. We also have pick lists for both of them. So if you click on that, it will show you the addresses that are associated with a particular organization, and it will show you some of the information that's associated with that invoice. It just makes it easier to find the invoice that you're looking for. It may not be intuitive from the way in which it's been named. So my billing address is, as it says, invoice house on invoice street, and then delivery address I have as the warehouse. So I'm just reselecting these so that you can see. So these pick lists pull through the addresses, and under delivery address, you now also have this delivery address, same as billing address. As the name suggests, you can also use this checkbox to set your delivery address to be the same as your billing address. So if I do this, it changes to invoice house as above. So if you if you have organisation and people records with multiple addresses, as Jean says, you can pick a preferred billing location and a preferred delivery location. And so if you bill to one address but actually send your delivery to another address, you can tick the box on one address and the other box on the other address, and they'll populate accordingly. So what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to push this through into an invoice, because what I'm going to show you now is the changes that we've made to the Word add-in. So we've made a few changes to the Word add-in in this release. Just reminding me to save before I do anything else. So with the Word add-in, previously you've had this concept of binding in the Word add-in. So what that means is you've had to create your Word template and then bind it within Word. The feedback we've had on this was that a lot of people had trouble getting it to work. So what we've done is we've just removed the concept of binding in this release. So now all you have to do is you have to add repeat table tags before and after your table in your Word document to enable the Word add-in to populate a table. So if I show you this here, this is the invoice that I just pushed out into Word. So this has populated with this table. So this is repeating tags above and below, and this table here is what we refer to as an iterating table. So an iterating table is one in which the table creates multiple rows. So for example, you might use this to add transaction line items to a document. You can also use iterating tables anywhere you have multiple records related to another record. So for example, you might have activities that are related to cases or people who are related to organisations. So what I've also done is, until now, you've only been able to pull data from a single report in Workbooks, which is all well and good. But if you've got this report here, this invoice, and you want to include data on the contacts within the record, then you can pull that information through now by adding another table. So the way in which you do this is by using the ID. So if you have the ID of the object that you're referencing, in this case it's a contact, you can now amend your repeat table tags to include a new report name and a new view if you have that ID. And then you can create multiple tables on your Word document from multiple reports. So you can see that here. I have the information from the invoice, but I also have the information on the contacts. So you can see in my template, I've populated my report with the view and the ID, so that when I go here, it's populated the table. They've populated the tables using data from two different reports rather. And this is obviously really useful if you want to do multiple references and where you have data on different tables. I'll switch away from this now and go back to this. So one of the other areas in which we've made changes is in form layouts. So one of the things that we've done is we've allowed you now have the ability to auto-size the height on a dashboard grid report. So if I scroll down here and I open this, conversion rates by rep, and then open this report itself. So for example, in here, in the original, we have here, you can see there's a lot of white space on the right hand side. So before, you could remove the blank space by editing the dashboard. So what I'll do then is I'll go into the actual dashboard itself that uses this record, uses this report. So if I go in here and find my sales management dashboard, and open that up. And here, if I edit the dashboard, and then go to layout. And if I go back to that report that I opened earlier on, conversion rates by rep, and just click on the cog here, then what I'll see is this report opened up here. So what I can see is all the settings that relate to this particular report, one of which is element height. Now, we've had this in the product before. This has been in previous releases. And in this window, what you can select is half height, normal height, and double height. But what you can now also do is choose auto. So if I choose auto and then choose save and close, when I go back to that report, when I go back to that dashboard, I can now see that that report is no longer displaying that blank space beneath, because what it's now doing is it's auto-sizing in order to ensure that it's making the best use of space. So when you choose auto and then save and close, you can now see that the report has as many lines of data as it needs. Alternatively, this will be limited by the maximum number of items that you've set in your preferences, which is up to it can be up to 100, and you set that through preferences. So if you go into preferences and then scroll down to lists, you'll be able to see that. So that's telling my instance of workbooks to show 100 items on each page. So when you auto-size the height of grid reports in a dashboard, this won't affect the charts that are displayed alongside it, because they're already auto-sizing to make best use of the space available. But for grid reports in a dashboard, this should cut down the amount of scrolling up and down that you have to do in individual reports. So if I then, what we can also do is we can auto-size column widths. So if I then look at this, what I can do here I've opened this report here. Oops. No, beg your pardon. This is the wrong thing. If I go back to where I was and open this report. So I've opened the conversion metrics, conversion rates by rep report. And if I select the view and then go to view, so this brings up the details of the view. And if I click here and click on auto size all columns, that will automatically tick on that, save, and then go back to my report. And you can see now that this has expanded to take up the blank space on the right-hand side of the grid. So until now, you've only been able to individually adjust columns and auto-size individual columns, and you still can, but the auto-size ability also means that you can automatically make columns as wide as they need to be based on the data in the column. So it's just, again, it's just using making the best use of space. Also in this release, we've made several changes to improve the reporting functionality. So I'm just going to switch to a different report now. So if I open this report here, which is campaign members in the IT and telecommunications industry, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show going to edit report, and then within columns, what you'll see here is these little black drill through arrows. So now whenever you have a drill through column like this, which is showing members of a campaign by employer and by industry, it's going to show through on the descriptors here. So this should make it easier to see exactly which column's doing what, where that's drilling to. And this is especially for bigger, more complex reports, where it can be difficult to keep track of all of that. In addition, one of the things that we've added is you can now create another column like. So when you do this, it's not going to do that. When you do this, it's going to go ahead and it's going to pre-fill that drill through for you and just leave it blank, ready to be refilled, ready to be filled with whatever else we want to put into it. And we can also create a criteria on this as well. So if I right click here, I can also create a criteria, which is the same thing. It just pre-fills it for us, ready to make criteria. And you can also create criteria with calculated columns as well. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you the difference between, what we can now show is the difference between target and actual in this release for a report. So you'll see here that when I go into edit this report, and I scroll down here, so I open up this criteria, or this column rather, open this up, and if I go to targets, I can see that I have actual achieved, target, and I also have difference now. So when I go to this, it's now multi-select. So it makes a lot more sense to pick and to add to. And we can now add difference. So difference is just going to show a positive or negative number based on the actual difference between target and actual. So if I save and close this, in fact, if I go back in, because that didn't add that to that. So again, going back into targets and then adding difference. So I showed it, but I didn't add it. Schoolboy error. So when I go back to that, it will show auto-magically, shows the difference. So you can see clearly now the difference between your target and your actual. So you can see here that for myself as Anthony Can, I need to close the difference here by bringing in another just over 9 grand. So it should make it a little bit easier to do. From what I understand, you've been able to do this before, but it was quite long-winded to achieve with case statements and such. So this should be a lot quicker and easier and user-friendly to find that data. So that's the main changes that we've made to the functionality within Workbooks in this release. So what I'll do is I'll just take you through the slides. So just to round up what I've shown already, in terms of rather what Jean and I have shown. Excuse me a second. So I'll start that again. Right. So in this release, we've added the clean theme, which, as Jean said, is in beta. So we really do want your feedback on it. We are moving towards a cleaner, crisper interface for Workbooks to make it easier to see and to get to the information that you need and to see the information that you need more clearly. So we really do want your feedback on this. We will be discontinuing the other themes with the next release. So around September time, we will be using the clean theme as default. So if you're not already using the clean theme, then we would heartily recommend that you use that. As Jean said, we've moved now to rounded corners from square corners, and that mandatory blue bar only appears when the field is empty. The coloured line around the windows pertains to the colour of the particular module, if you like, that's being used. So black for organisations, blue for people, as Jean said. And there is also the compact version available if you want to be able to show more information on a particular field or on a particular row. And if you're using the mobile version, then that compact version will not be available to you, because it's intended to make it easier for you to be able to actually use the touch interface on that. So you can now rename the Springboard, as Jean said, which is controlled by the system administrator, and it will show the same name for all users. So the way to get to this is through configuration, then through customization, and then desktop preferences. So quite straightforward to do, and if you have any problems, then just get in touch. Also, with the business to business and business to consumer settings, these control whether you're either using whether your customers or your prospective customers are drawing on organizations of people, and the settings per database. This is reached through configuration and then database settings under database. And we have three options, as it says: business and consumers, businesses, and consumers. Funnily enough. Primary finance contacts and transaction records. So they're not shown by default, and Jean showed how you're able to get to them. So that's through configuration, database settings, and primary contact settings. And they're available on all transaction records, including opportunities. And the overview tab is now available on people, organisation, and transaction records. So on people, it will show next steps and previous activities in email. And on other records, it will show next steps, people, and previous activities and email. And as Jean also covered, copy fields on activities. So it's rich text and multi-line text. And it's ideal for internal notes for WES users. So just remember to put that information into the background info field rather than the description field if you don't want that information shared with people outside your organisation. And as what I would refer to as a human factors add in, you may want to add in info text to highlight the fact that the description field will appear in the Outlook meeting record. Default invoice and delivery addresses. So you set these up on the customer record, so either organisation or person, and they're also available on the transaction records, as I showed earlier. And then with the Word template enhancements, they're easier to create. There's no need to bind tables any longer. You can add multiple tables. You can also split tables, and you can also choose a different file name. And in terms of auto-sizing, you can auto-size the height for grid reports and dashboards. This applies to grid reports, and it adjusts the height of the element based on the number of rows in the report.
Andrew, sorry to
Hello.
interrupt.
No,
Hi, sorry to interrupt, but your volume is cutting in and out, and a couple of people have commented on it. I don't know if you're moving. I'm not quite sure why it is, but I just thought I'd flag it in case we can do anything to improve it.
Thank you very much for flagging that. I beg your pardon. No, I have not moved at all.
You've got to play statues.
Yes, I've been standing in the same position the whole time.
Okay, not sure. Hopefully people can hear though. I can hear it drifting in and out, but I can still hear you.
I'm so sorry. I can only apologise. I wasn't aware that that was happening.
That's okay.
Flagging, I appreciate that. So, as I said, the number of rows in the report will be subject to the maximum number of rows selected in your preferences. And similarly, auto-size column width also applies to columns, not just individual columns any longer, but you can auto-size all columns, and it will automatically adjust the width of all columns based on the data in the column to make the best use of space. And finally, in terms of reporting, you can create criteria from a column. You can also see the drill through in edit mode. And lastly, you can show the difference between target and actual. So those are the changes that we've made to the release. And now I'd just like to say thank you very much, Jean, and thank you very much for listening. And I'm going to open the floor to questions.
Now, Andrew, we have had some typed in while both of us have been presenting, so I might just run through those. And if anyone's got any others they want to add in, please feel free while I'm speaking. So, David, I suspect your question has been answered. You asked if the modern view is going to be replaced by the clean view, or will they both continue to be supported in the future? So the answer to that is that the clean theme, let me get the right terminology for you, the clean theme will be the default in our next release. I'm not sure exactly when that'll come out, but it'll be autumn, so I'm thinking sort of October, November, that kind of time. To the best of my knowledge, at that point, both of the other options will be available, but I must say the long-term plan is certainly to discontinue the classic theme, and I think probably thereafter the modern theme, but I don't have timelines on that, so I hope that's okay. Then Brian, 3 questions from Brian. Let's see if we can answer them. In the summary tab, can you now save and hide filters so that you can hide audit as default? Yes, Brian, and that's not part of this release. We've been able to do that for quite some time. If you don't want to see audit records on the summary tab, apply a filter that says context is not, and I think it's audit rather than audited, but you might need to just try both of those options. And you can certainly save that filter so that whenever you look at a summary tab, you don't see audit records. Your next question was, as we have customized layouts, is there any way to copy new default layouts from the standard layouts? The answer to that is no, but we haven't got new standard layouts. I think what you might be referring to there, if I've understood, is the fact that we do have new fields like the primary contact, the finance contact. They're new fields, but we haven't added them to the form layouts at all because we don't know where to put them, because we don't know if our customers will want to use them, and if so, whereabouts on the form they'll want to see them. So if you do want to use those, sysadmins, please go in and modify your form layouts. And if you need any help with that, have a chat with our support team. And then Brian, your third question was about monthly targets. I I don't mean to be rude, but I'm going to take that one offline because it's a little bit more complex and isn't specific to this release. So we will deal with that. We'll get back to you separately on that one. Question from Linda. If an invoicing contact is selected for a new invoice, which address is displayed on the document? So the address fields and the contact fields are separate. The contacts are just about the person name, and we'll pull through details about that person, like their email address and telephone number. If you want to, you don't have to display them. But the invoice address or the delivery address, they will default to whatever you've got ticked in that contact details tab on, I'm guessing for you, it would be the organization record. If you haven't set anything as the default invoice address, for example, it will just assume that you mean the main organization address, which is called the work address under contact details. Hopefully that answers that, but do let us know if you've got any other queries on that one. Justina, yes, the recording will be made available to watch. You'll get an email over the next day or two from the marketing team with a link to where you can get hold of the recording. So I'm glad you want to see that again. And Sarah, how do we add the primary contact to show? I guess you mean on those transaction records. Sarah, I don't know if you're a sysadmin or not. If you are, hopefully you're aware of the fact that within configuration customization, you can go to a particular record type, let's say an invoice, and you can go to the form layouts and choose to switch on, as it were, make visible the field for the primary contact. You'll also see that there are additional fields, those ones I was referring to, things like the telephone number and the email address. If you want those to show on your invoice or whatever layout it is, again, it's a case of positioning them where you want them to be. The easiest way to switch them on right now is that our engineers have bundled all of those pieces of information. So all of the primary contact information is in a section which isn't switched on, but you could just go and switch the entire section on, and then all of those fields will magically appear. Or if you just want to pick, maybe say the contact's name and their email address, you would manually just switch those two fields on and position them wherever you want them on the form layout. So I know I'm just talking at high level there. It might be difficult to imagine if you haven't done that before, but there is lots of information. In fact, there are videos about this on our knowledge base. There's also written information. And of course, our support team would be happy to hear from you if you need a bit of guidance with that. That's all the questions that have come through so far. You're welcome, Sarah. That's all the questions that have come through so far. Is there anything from anyone else? Of course, if you think of anything after the fact that you want to ask, again, you can contact the support team. And I think actually there's an extra slide that talks about you can contact your account managers as well. So if you need any help with any of this, we'd be happy to give it. There we go. Thank you. As if by magic, Andrew's showing that for you. You'll also find information on our release and the roadmap, what we're planning to do in future. But I know we've banged on about it, but it's because it's important. If you have feedback, please do give this clean theme a go, because we've had so much feedback that has led to us developing this that we'd really like to hear from you now that we've got it, to see, you know, which bits do you like, which bits maybe do you not like quite so much. Can't promise we'll incorporate all of your changes, but if we don't know, then we certainly can't incorporate them. So please do let support at Workbooks know if you have any feedback. So for my part, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Hope you found it useful. And I'm going to take my very cold sounding voice and take myself off, but I hope you're all well and hope to speak to you at the next release session.
Yes, thank you very much, Jean, and thank you for your valiant effort despite your illness. So thank you. I'm just going to say thank you, everybody, for attending. And as Jean said, there'll be an email coming out to you over the next couple of days with a link to the webinar recording, so you can revisit this in Technicolor. All right, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.